You are the last remaining version of a biological experiment that failed 13 times in a row. A stone axe strikes bone. Splinters erupt. They hang suspended in the absolute absence of light. A crimson flash of impact illuminates the dust. This is a cave in Spain. The specimen is Homo heidelbergensis. The timeline is 430,000 years ago. It is the site known as Sima de los Huesos. The pit of bones. The skull fractures under a deliberate, lethal blow. A murder. An anomaly of internal violence. Hold that anomaly in your mind. We will return to it. You are taught a comfortable narrative about your existence. You walk into museums and see the illustrations. You visualize the march of progress. You picture an ape rising from the dirt, stepping out of the forest canopy, walking with purpose toward the triumph of modern human intelligence. You view the past as a staircase, and you stand on the top step. That image is a fabrication. A conceptual lie designed to soothe the human ego. The hard data paints a bleak picture. The genus Homo is not a linear success story. It is a 2.8 million year casualty ward. A continuous parade of fragile, malfunctioning, diseased prototypes. 13 distinct iterations of the human machine walked this planet. Homo habilis. Homo ergaster. Homo naledi. Homo neanderthalensis. 13 versions possessed bipedalism. They controlled fire. They chipped stone tools. Some were faster. Some were physically denser. Some possessed adaptations specialized for extreme cold, boasting massive nasal cavities to warm freezing air. Others were built for brutal heat, sporting elongated limbs to shed thermal energy. And the Earth dismantled every single one of them. This leaves an agonizing paradox. If 13 other versions of human were equipped with superior physical architecture, why are you the only one left to tell their ghost stories? To understand the answer, you must look at the mechanical fragility of the early human chassis. You assume your intelligence makes you the apex. You assume tools made your ancestors unkillable. But in the primordial dark, a spear is just a stick. A campfire is a beacon. It signals your location to things that do not fear the light. The human body is soft. It lacks armor plating. It produces no venom. It operates on a razor-thin thermal margin. A drop of a few degrees in core temperature results in organ failure. A slight increase leads to brain death. The earlier prototypes were thrust into an environment that tested these mechanical limits with extreme prejudice. Consider the primary environmental stress tester of the Pleistocene epoch. The Pachycrocuta. This is the giant short-faced hyena. A predator weighing 150 kilograms. It possesses a jaw structure that does not bite flesh. It crushes architecture. Mandibular torque and organic hydraulic bone press. A 300-pound biological industrial machine built to unlock the high-caloric marrow batteries hidden inside primate femurs. Early humans were not the apex hunters of this landscape. They were the hunted. They were walking nutritional reserves. Pachycrocuta turned human cave shelters into literal feeding troughs. The beast dragged Homo erectus carcasses into the pitch black to process the remains. Bone marrow is the ultimate survival fuel. It is a dense matrix of fat and blood stem cells. Predators crave it. But accessing it requires specialized hardware. The human femur shatters under immense pressure. At 4,500 newtons of bite force. An equivalent of 1,000 pounds per square inch. Imagine a 3D stress test simulation. The human skull is a cold gray sphere. As the teeth of the hyena clamp down, electric blue stress lines spiderweb across the parietal bone. The structural integrity holds for a fraction of a second. Then it fails. The cranium compresses. It ruptures. The bone fragments turn into shrapnel, tearing through the soft tissue of the brain. Being crushed in the dark by apex predators is a terrifying mechanical failure. But external trauma is not even the most dangerous part of the Pleistocene design flaw. The true horror happens inside the blood. Look at the internal biological failure via diet and disease. Examine the remains of Homo erectus, a specific specimen known to science as Turkana boy. The organism consumes the liver of a carnivore. Perhaps a lion, perhaps a wolf. It is an act of desperate survival. The hominid requires calories. But that single organ contains 150 years' worth of a vital nutrient. Hypervitaminosis, a biological system overload leading to a skeletal meltdown. The human filtration system cannot process the chemical influx. The kidneys struggle. The liver fails. The blood becomes toxic. Septicemia, a microscopic coup d'etat within the veins. Listen. Below the howling wind of the surface. Below the echo of the cave. There is a microscopic, high-frequency heartbeat. The sound of a single, corrupted cell dividing. A microscopic system corruption. Malware introduced into the human software. A single tooth alignment error triggers an abscess. The infection seeps into the bloodstream. The bacteria multiply. The architecture of the human body begins to liquidate its own internal defenses. The immune system becomes a weapon of self-destruction. This is the invisible breakdown of the machine. Look at a cross-section of a Homo erectus femur through a macro lens. You do not see dense, healthy white marrow. You see porous, weeping bone structures. They glow with a sickly amber hue. The skeletal chassis hemorrhages from the inside out. Retinol toxicity rewrites the instructions sent to the osteoclasts. These are the microscopic demolition crews within your bones. By design, they clear away old tissue to make room for new growth. Under the influence of massive vitamin A doses, they go rogue. Osteoclastic hyperactivity, an unchecked biological corrosive agent eating the framework of the chassis. The bone calcifies with fatal errors. Tissues swell. The joints stiffen into useless knots of calcium. The organism is awake while its structural support dissolves. The pain is absolute. It is a slow, methodical erasure of skeletal integrity. This answers the question of the extinct 13. Why did the others die out? Because their internal systems liquidated from their own diets. Because a single bacterial infection from a cracked tooth cascaded into fatal software failure. Because their external hardware could not withstand the biomechanical shear force of their environment. Welcome to the Pleistocene Grinder. It is not a static environment. It is a hostile, shifting landscape designed to purge weakness. Feel the atmosphere of this era. Feel the trauma of vitamin A toxicity on the flesh. The dermis loses its adhesive properties. It feels like wet parchment tearing off a wooden frame. The skin slides off the muscle tissue in heavy, damp sheets. Every movement exposes raw nerves to the freezing air. Listen to the acoustic resonance of the cave. The wet, rhythmic crunch snap of a Pachycrocuta eating a Homo erectus alive. The sound reverberates against the limestone. A mechanical crushing of a living organism. It is the sound of an entire species being processed for its caloric value. Now shift your perspective upward. Avian visual Umwelt, high contrast, motion sensitive tracking focused from the sky. Pleistocene eagles do not hunt mice. They hunt primates. The raptor drops from the canopy in absolute silence. It targets the most vulnerable soft tissue of the human chassis. The eye socket. Biological talons act as surgical steel. They puncture the orbital bone. They pierce the frontal lobe before the hominid registers the shadow. For millions of years, the sky was a ceiling of high-speed horror for anything with a face. And the water was worse. Approach the edge of the prehistoric river. The water is opaque. The mud conceals a nightmare of scale. Crocodylus thorbjarnarsoni. A crocodilian measuring 7.6 meters in length. The exact dimensions of a city bus. This is an apex aquatic ambush engine. It specializes in hunting our ancestors. It waits for the thirsty primate to break the surface tension of the water. When it strikes, the human nervous system cannot process the velocity. The jaws lock around the torso. The prototype is dragged into the cold dark. The hydrostatic pressure of the death roll dislocates every major joint in a fraction of a second. Lungs fill with silt. The biological machine drowns. This slaughterhouse operated without pause. You are the 14th iteration. You look back at a timeline of deep time and see survival. You see human dominance. The fossil record sees a debris field. Geological lahar flows, a volcanic mudflow of rock and boiling water pouring down a valley. A volcanic eruption melts a glacier. The water mixes with ash. It creates a rushing wall of liquid cement moving at highway speeds. When the mud settles and solidifies, it creates geological concrete. Paleontologists dig into this concrete and find the Carcass Jam. A dozen Homo erectus bodies tangled together like discarded logs. Sandwiched between uprooted trees and the bones of giant sloths. Flash frozen in a moment of sheer geological indifference. Their tools did not save them. Their upright posture did not save them. Mass extinction events treat humans the same way they treat deadwood. Debris to be swept into the dark. Nature spent 3 million years trying to erase the human design. And yet, we survived. But survival required a compromise. We are not the chosen species. We are the leftover species. You look at the modern world and assume it is the result of inherent greatness. You believe that controlling fire and shaping stone elevated your ancestors above the beasts. You believe intelligence acts as a shield. This is human arrogance at its most profound. Those ancestors had fire. They had tools. They had basic language. And the earth still treated them as prey. As patients. As victims. They were bone marrow snacks for hyenas. They were playthings for city bus-sized crocodiles. Their intelligence did not make them unkillable. It just made them hyper-aware of their own helpless suffering. It gave them the capacity to feel existential dread as the shadows closed in. The physical horror of the Pleistocene is in the past. But the psychological terror remains encoded in your DNA. Your anxiety, your hypervigilance, your fear of the dark. These are not malfunctions. They are the software remnants of a hunted animal. Remember the anomaly from the dark cave in Spain. Sima de los Huesos. 430,000 years ago. The stone axe splitting the skull of Homo heidelbergensis. The first recorded murder. In the beginning, it looked like a tragedy. A tragic flaw in a fragile species unable to cooperate. It is not a tragedy. It is our origin story. It is our ultimate survival mechanism. Why are we the only ones left? Why did the 14th prototype survive the 7.6-meter crocodiles, the crushing hydraulic jaws of the giant hyenas, and the toxic rot of the primordial landscape? We did not become physically stronger. We did not grow thicker skin or sharper claws. Our bodies remained soft, pathetic, and vulnerable. We survived because we adapted a new psychology. We learned to strike first. We learned to eradicate competition with extreme prejudice. We survived the monsters outside our caves by evolving into the most dangerous, violent, and ruthless monsters to ever walk the earth. We became a species that would shatter the skull of its own kind in the dark, to secure a superior vantage point. The Earth built a 2.8 million year slaughterhouse to test the human design. It applied pressure, disease, predators, and geological fire. It ran 13 separate trials, and it terminated all of them. We are the product of that forge. We are the hyper-violent anomaly that refused to die. You look in the mirror and see the pinnacle of evolution. You should see a highly unstable biological weapon, calibrated by millions of years of horrific trauma. If the Earth purged 13 versions of us for being imperfect, what makes you think the current version has passed the test?